You're listening to the Turn Autism Around podcast, episode number 150. Today we have Melissa Leahy, who was a naval officer for 6 years before leaving the service to be a mom and to support her active duty husband, who was also a Navy officer. And they lived in Japan when her middle son, Mattis, was diagnosed with autism. And so they relocated back to Virginia and now have had a BCBA help just for a month or two. Mattis will be 3 at the time of this podcast airing, and Melissa wanted to come on the show to give listeners a glimpse at getting a child diagnosed in the military services, some challenges faced by military families, and also challenges faced by all parents around the world when their young child suddenly shows signs of autism. So we talk about the challenges, we talk about insurance a little bit, we talk about squashing some of the ABA myths, and really how she got Mattis from just saying a couple words to saying multiple words, how they got rid of a serious disorder called pica, which he was eating dirt when they were living in Japan, how she got safety under control. And even we talk about how to get dental visits paired up. And she's got some tricks with that as well. And he also is potty trained almost completely right before he was 3. So we talk about all of this and more, and really how Melissa has become Mattis's best teacher and advocate for life, and how that's made her a better parent to her other sons as well. So it was a fun episode. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get to Melissa Leahy. So, Melissa, it is so nice to meet you. I was excited for this call. So thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to meet you too and to do this.
Awesome. So I found you because you filled out a success story short survey at marybarbera.com/success. And it was such a great success story. And then I remembered you posting a lot in the Facebook group. So why don't we just start with describe your fall into the autism world?
So I was living in Yokosuka, Japan at the time, and I was pregnant with my 3rd son. I gave birth to him in June of 2020. In the middle of the pandemic. My husband was deployed, and he was around 2 months old when I had to go to a doctor's appointment for him. My middle son, Mattis, who was diagnosed with autism, attended the appointment with me. The appointment wasn't for him. He was asleep during the appointment. He woke up during the appointment, and he's playing with a little switch on the ground. Whatever the inoperable chair was, he was playing with the switch. And the pediatrician showed up to the appointment, and I would say that the manner in which he brought it about was inappropriate. He goes, "What's wrong with your son? Is he autistic or something?" And then he proceeded to parent shame me about how if I had spent 15 minutes of time with each of my children every single day, then my son wouldn't be what he was. And I remember going home crying that day. I was postpartum at the time. My husband wasn't home. I didn't have my family with me. And I remember just being incredibly depressed and sad because I didn't know what autism was.
And you weren't thinking that there were any delays.
I just thought it was kind of the effects of being in quarantine. We were locked up in our apartment for 3 to 4 months we finally were able to come out, and I was like, well, maybe this is just the effects of being quarantined and it would wear off.
Really?
The doctor never suggested any kind of interventions or services that we could look into. He just said what's wrong with him and then proceeded to tell me that it was my fault. So I went for months actually thinking I was denying autism. I was like, he's not autistic. He's not autistic. Or as we called it, the A word. I was like, he's not autistic. I remember being on the playground asking my friends, like, do you think he's autistic? And they say, just give it some time and read about it. Maybe if you read about it, you can maybe find the way to get him some help if that's what you believe it to be. And what really triggered it was my husband returned from deployment. He had been gone since February of 2020, came home in November of 2020, and my son didn't even recognize him, ran right past him like he was a ghost. My husband could have been wearing a clown costume and my son wouldn't have even paid any attention to him. And another thing that triggered me was we went to a fire engine parade. The noises were loud, the sirens, and I actually have a video of it, of my older son covering his ears because the noise was so loud. And my son Mattis was just like, the sirens could have hit him in the face and he wouldn't have even acknowledged it. And so then months went by and my husband was like, well, let's look into autism. Let's see what it is. I said, no, I don't want to look it up. I don't want to know what it is, because the doctor made it sound like it was a death sentence. Like if that's what it is, you're gonna, it's your fault. And my husband finally told me, we have to just look this in the face. We have to go head on with it. And he goes, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We Googled autism and your name popped up. And my husband started watching the videos and we would see like, what is the difference between delay and what is autism? And everything my son would do, it would always revert back to a symptom of autism: the spinning, the head tapping, different things he would do, the spacing out. It seemed like he was looking at you, but he was looking through you. You weren't there. We were supposed to take on orders to go to Bahrain, Manama, Bahrain.
So hold on one second, because this is like, wow, you had a lot going on. So you were in Japan, but your husband wasn't even in Japan. He wasn't just not home that night. He was away for months before and after this A word was dropped out of the blue.
Yes.
And so now he's, 20 months when the new baby's born. And now you're getting into November, your husband comes home, he doesn't recognize him. And all these factors like the pandemic. Yes, definitely. We've done other podcast shows with Dr. Catherine Lord on the effects of the pandemic and getting a diagnosis during the pandemic. Michelle C. did a podcast on getting the diagnosis right before the pandemic. And then Rachel just did a podcast on just her toddler who was just speech delayed, but the effects of the pandemic. So, and then you had 3 kids back to back.
Mm-hmm.
So that must have been incredibly isolating. And I'm assuming you were on a military base where the doctor and all your friends were speaking English, but still at the same time, you were far away from home.
Yes. And the only support I had was of my friends, and they encouraged me. They said, well, why don't you try and get Mattis and TJ into school and see how that goes? He ended up going to a Japanese international school. He started in February of 2021. And I did some drop-bys and I looked through the window and he was not participating with the other kids. He was off by himself, or he would be looking out a window. And I remember coming home telling my husband, like, I think we need to look into some help for him. On base, they had what's called Early Developmental Intervention Services, EDIS. And unfortunately, when you live overseas for a military base, it's usually one speech therapist, one occupational therapist, and they're spread thin across a ton of kids. So Mattis only got an hour a week of OT, and 2 hours a month of speech. And unfortunately, it just wasn't doing it. It was not helping. My husband and I decided we needed to take matters into our own hands until we could figure out what to do. And we Googled autism, your name popped up. And my husband was like, we watched the videos, and I felt so moved by your story because I had a similar case. I didn't want to believe it was autism, the A word. And the shame I felt.
Spencer was 2 months old. I took him for a well check, and I asked about Lucas. Lucas was 21 months of age. And, so, I went into a really deep state of denial for over a year, so, but I mean, I was kind of like you, though. I hadn't seen any problem. And then all of a sudden somebody mentions the A word, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So when did he finally get diagnosed? When you were in Japan?
He did, actually. We were supposed to get follow-on orders to move to Manama, Bahrain. My husband was supposed to take command of a ship over there. And our occupational therapist we were working with found out about that. And she said, we need to do something about that because we don't want you to move. And if he gets diagnosed, your husband can't come home with you. So you're going to have to go home by yourself and do all this, do everything, get your home set up and everything you need to help Maddie. So the diagnosing doctor rearranged her schedule. The diagnosing doctor in Japan on base, she, God bless her. She rearranged her schedule, and she spent 3 hours with us. She not only diagnosed Maddie, but she gave us the, instead of, what they do is they diagnose and then they write it up and then debrief you. She debriefed us that moment after he was diagnosed. And she said, man, that was hard to see because there's some moments where he's there. And then there's moments where he has those tendencies. He was diagnosed with mild to moderate autism, level 2. And she decided not to send us home because we were going to get change of orders. My husband reached out to his chain of command and his detailer, and we're a very blessed family, and that the detailer honored that and said, and had my husband elected to turn down taking command of a ship so we could come home to Virginia to help Maddie, to better help him.
Yeah.
In the meantime, from April 28th, 2021, when he was diagnosed, until we returned home on August 21st, we took your course, and we were able to rid Mattis of all of his safeties that he had issues with. Head tapping, spinning, eating. He had pica, so he used to eat dirt. And we were able to rid him of all that, to include running away from me.
Just watching the toddler course, you were able to make a plan, assess, and wow. So that's awesome. So you found out about my course just by watching my videos. And then once you got the diagnosis, although half the people that introduce themselves in our toddler course actually have kids without a diagnosis yet. So,
we felt incredibly blessed that we were able to get a diagnosis because she had a lengthy wait list for overseas. And she said she just didn't want us to have to move to Bahrain to find out that he had that going on. And then I'd have to come home by myself. In the military, we call that an early return of dependence. So my husband would stay by himself in Bahrain, and I would come home with my 3 kids and have to set up a home and have all our belongings shipped back to Virginia. And she just didn't, she thought that, she goes, with she being aware of the condition, said he really needs that stabilization, and to have all this moving around is not going to help him.
Yeah. So what do you think are you're highlighting them, but what are the specific challenges of military families when their child shows a sign of autism? Well, one thing is, the deployment, or the fact that your husband wasn't there for support to, physically, or
physical support. Yeah. I think what comes with it is they think their career is over. And I guess the message I want to send to those military families is that's a heavy burden to put on a child, to say that your husband's career is over because your child has a diagnosis, whether it be autism, Down syndrome, ADD, ADHD, anything like that, any kind of symptom, that's a heavy burden to put on a child. I remembered when Mattis was diagnosed, a lady in our building told me, well, that's going to be a career killer. And I remember going, he's not killing any career. We kill our own careers by choices. If anything,
you were also in the military.
I was in the military.
So you stopped working in the military when you had
TJ, and I had my oldest son. I was pregnant at the time, and I got out of the military to be a mom.
Could you not have stayed in Japan and gotten treatment, or gone to this new country and gotten treatment for him?
So for the military, they just don't have those services available. And TRICARE, to my understanding, does not offer that out in town, because it's if we were in Japan, it would be a Japanese ABA therapist. It wouldn't be somebody who speaks English. So we would have probably had to work that. I know that there are families who pay somebody out of pocket to live with them in an overseas country. God bless them. I don't have that kind of money. So we came home where there are more services available because of the language we speak. We speak English. There's many English services here, and that's kind of what kind of helps that. And then I also have a little more support here. So if I need my mom to come or my mother-in-law to come, I can get that. And I couldn't do that in Japan with the COVID restrictions they're having right now as well for travel.
Wow. Yeah. So COVID was the first thing that really affected you and your family. And then autism was, the second big one. So, what advice would you give military families if they are in a similar situation, have a child showing signs or diagnosed, or
get them the help, they need? The job comes and goes, but your kids, you have to live with them for the rest of their lives. And it's not a career killer. It's not going to, I know there's a lot of families that are like, well, we want to travel the world and we want to see things, and get them the help they need now, so then you can go see the world. I didn't know this, but there are so many families over there that had, when I say older children, that's a loose term. They were like 7 or 8 years old, and they had been diagnosed with autism. They got the services and interventions they needed back in our home country of America. And then they were able to later travel with them. And frankly, I have to just admit, I think it's a little bit easier to travel with children when they're potty trained, not on a bottle, and they can, are at least a little more self-sufficient than at the age mine are, which is 16 months, 2.5 and 4.5. So I think you just have to kind of look at the bigger picture, like get your child the help they need. And if it's available, do it, because I know a lot of families that don't have that military TRICARE or just health insurance like that. And it's challenging for them to get the help that they need. So if you have it available, take it, use it, because that's what it's there for.
How much work was involved with you taking the toddler course? And did you find it taxing or overwhelming?
It was so easy to take. I loved your course. It was I'm a very cut and dry person. I'm very black and white. That may be why at least two of my children are very black and white. And I loved it. It was very easy to understand. It's like, first things first, safeties, get that under control. Because the minute I got him to stop the spinning, the head tapping, the chewing on things, the eating dirt, and I was able to focus on, I liked your ABC method too, the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. It not only applied to Mattis, my diagnosed autistic child, but it helped me to actually parent my older child too, and understand why he was doing sometimes the things that he does. So it was really helpful, and it really helped me to feel better as a parent. I'm not a perfect parent, but I feel better as a parent now, a little more confident than I did before.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend it even for children who are not autistic.
Yeah. Yeah, I just was asked recently, like, are these tantrums, is this the terrible twos or is this autism? I'm like, it doesn't have to be a part of either. You don't have to have a child who tantrums every day, multiple times a day. That's all reinforcement and behavior.
Mhm.
And when you have an overwhelming situation and then you have a child with delays on top of it, it's hard to kind of sort through what are your most critical issues to tackle first. So safety is definitely a big one. It's a chapter in my new book, Turn Autism Around. It's, life and death. We're not
Yes.
going to work on anything if a child's running away from you towards streets and in water. And, it's just first things first to try to keep them safe.
I do have a comment about is this a tantrum of autism or something that's really helped me to kind of put things into perspective. And I think maybe because I have an older child, I'm like, oh, that's just being that 2.5-year-old, is don't always think it's autism. Sometimes it's just kids are kids and they don't want to listen all the time. Like, I don't consider it a failure when I do things with him and he doesn't respond right away, because sometimes I know he listens and he heard what I said and he just wants to be a 2.5-year-old and do what he wants. Like, hey, we don't climb up on the counter. And then he goes, does it anyway. Sometimes you just have to, it's not always autism. Sometimes it's just the age.
Right. And with 3 young children, your life would still be stressful, even if autism wasn't a part of it.
Of course. Oh, absolutely. I'm tired. I was tired with my first one and I'm tired with my second and my third. Kids are tiring.
So when you were talking about antecedent behavior consequence and behavioral therapy, so what you also wrote on the little survey before the interview that you wanted to squash the rumors and untruths about ABA therapy. So why don't we let you talk about that?
Okay, so there's a lot of rumors that, because it all starts with the history of ABA. ABA started, if I remember correctly from my reading, where they used to punish the child. And I've heard a lot of different blogs that I read, like, well, it's all about reward, they treat them like a dog. So my comment to that is, well, you treat your child like a dog, you give them a reward. Do you not go to work and earn a paycheck? Because that's a reward. Just because somebody didn't be like, if you fill out this spreadsheet, you're going to get a paycheck today. We all earn a reward. It's just a matter of, and we all do things through motivation. What motivates you to do something? So it's not treating them like a dog. We're treating them like we would in society. You do this, and this is the outcome that's going to come, whether it's a positive or negative consequence. As for the physical, reprimanding, my child has never been physically reprimanded, but everything starts somewhere. And unfortunately, that had a little bit of a history to it. Just like we talked about, when women used to be pregnant, they used to knock you out, or they'd put a stick in your mouth and cut you open. And they had to decide, you want the mom to live or the baby to live. It doesn't mean I don't go to the doctor now, because a long time ago, that's what they used to do to women. So ABA, something also, an advice that our ABA therapist gave us is, it's not ABA that's failing you, it's the therapist. So if it's not working, find a new therapist. It's just like a hairdresser. If the hairdresser doesn't work, find a new hairdresser. The same with ABA. Your child and the therapist have to mesh, and you have to mesh because we're a team. So if it's not working out, there's no hard feelings. Just move on and find a new one, or take your course and you can do the ABA yourself. And then you won't have any problems.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get into this, I waited all this time. I was in a wait list. Now insurance is paying, and now I'm getting it. It's supposed to work. These people are supposed to know what they're doing. And I have professionals listening here, and how I am always positive and want to teach both parents and professionals what to do. But, parents are their child's best advocate and child's best teacher. And like you said, you can learn online through my courses what to do and how to implement. And that also helps you determine what companies, what people are going to approach it in a similar manner. Not like they have to be an expert on the Turn Autism Around approach, but they have to be willing to, hear you if you say, why are we working on colors, and they're banging their head against hard surfaces, which is what happened to Kelsey, who's featured in podcast number 3, who's our community manager. Like, they can't be working on things that are way too hard if we've got safety issues, if we've got major problem behaviors, if we've got pica, for instance, which is another thing I've done a video blog on. Pica is a serious medical condition. So anybody that wouldn't be looking at that, at running in streets and in water, that is where we start. So in my opinion, it's less about like the personality. Just get me somebody who's good with kids, nice, and willing to work with me.
Yeah. And you're a team, and they're willing to understand the child. I think you said it best, which is, when you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child. They're not all the same. My other 2 children are not autistic, and they're very different from one another. And autistic children should be considered the same. They're all unique, and they all have different motivations. But taking your course and implementing it for those months before we came home and found a therapist was so helpful, and it was life-changing. And we were able to get the ball rolling for Matty by getting rid of those by helping him with those safeties. We were able to get him going to then start pulling the words out of his mouth, and to, manding and tacting, and and
was he speaking at all when he was diagnosed?
He was not. He was making noises,
and he was what, 2 when he was diagnosed?
He was he turned 2 in November of 2020. So he was about 24 months, or I'm sorry, 24 months, 31 months around that time. Sorry. 20 months. He was almost 2.5 around that time, I'd say. And he literally did not say anything. And when his therapist came to do his intake, she specifically said, the only thing I heard Matty say was noises and 2 words: mama, and no.
And then, when you came home, what was he saying? Was he saying a bunch of words?
Now he started ABA therapy September 7th.
Okay.
And with help. He was doing ABA with me, but with the help of a BCBA. Mattis is now potty trained. He pee-pees and poo-poos on the potty, and he lets me know. He says consistently 30 words, which is huge in that short of time. And he's now starting on 2-word sentences, like, we're working on the pronouns, but like, you peed. I'm like, no, you peed. And then I have to go, wait, Mattis potty. And he goes, oh, yeah, okay. So we're getting there, and he can now request cups. He will go pull the picture off the wall and hand it to me. He will go find me to get a cup, because that motivates him. He wants that cup and he wants that food. So it's been just awesome to see him.
And how old is he now, did you say? Is he 3?
He will be 3 in November. He's not even 3 yet.
Soon. So how did you find a BCBA? You knew you were going to go from Japan back to Virginia at some point. And so, like, how did you go about the process of finding someone that would mesh well?
So before, when we found out he was diagnosed, I was like, man, what a relief. We can finally get the ball rolling, because that opens doors exponentially, because like, now I know what's going on. Now we can drive this train somewhere.
You said once you get the diagnosis, it opens up, but tell us how you found a BCBA.
Yeah. So while overseas, my goal before we left Japan was, when we landed in America, everything was going to be ready to go. I didn't want gaps. I wanted to keep doing what I was doing in Japan and get started when we got home. So I went on to, we have a private autism page for our area. And I said, I'm looking for a therapist that follows to Mary Barbera's Turning Autism Around program. I said, this is our mindset. This is how we operate. I like her program. If you haven't done it, I recommend it. And I said, but I want to find a therapist who does this and who does in-home. I don't want to go to a clinic. And I had different people reach out to me, and they didn't read my post because I specifically said I don't want a clinic, and they tried really hard to get me to go to the clinic. And I had a woman message me, and she goes, why don't you reach out to this? She private messaged me, didn't even write a comment. She goes, you should reach out to this woman named Lori Stacy. I think you'll be very pleased. So I texted her while I lived in Japan, and I said, hi, my name is Melissa. I live in Japan. I'm sorry for the time difference, but I'm in need of a BCBA, and I followed to the Mary Barbera program, and you were recommended. And she wrote me back immediately, and she said, oh yes, I followed to Mary's course. We got to know each other virtually via email. When I had questions, she would respond to them, especially when it was during that time I was working on safeties, and she helped me. And I was, hold on a second. If nobody minds, I'm going to take this with me in here. Sorry, it's not easily distracted. I said, she worked with me virtually. We got to know each other via email, and it ended up being a good fit. She felt like it was a good fit, and she said that she would take us on as clients.
She has TRICARE and lives in Virginia near you.
And the biggest was going to be, hold on a second, let me get him up here. The biggest was going to be whether or not, because we decided we were going to put Maddie in preschool. We reached out to the City of Chesapeake Public Schools, and we enrolled Mattis in the special education preschool, which is 2 hours a day. They put Mattis in the morning class, and Lori reached back out to us and said, perfect, I can come by your house after Mattis gets done with school. Mattis goes to school from 7:30 in the morning until 10:05. 10:05. He rides the school bus by himself to and from school, gets dropped off at my front door, and Lori's here, and we start, and he does 3 hours of ABA every day, Monday through Friday.
Oh, wow. Do you have a behavior technician that's under Lori as well?
Nope, she just works with me, and we do training sessions once a week, just to kind of answer any questions I have, or like kind of tweak and fine tune, like maybe what we think would work for Mattis and what didn't work for Maddie. And I mean, we do it throughout the session too, like, oh, that's not working, let's try something else. But he's responded really well to her, and to the advice that we've gotten from your program. And I think that's why we've been so successful with it, is because we followed to that. I think the experience with autism, whether we were military or not, I think the only difference is that being under, at least for TRICARE, we have a little bit more available with the services we can outreach to. But I also live in a really military, heavily populated area. So this is the place to go. Like when Mattis was diagnosed, we were told the best option is San Diego or Norfolk. Which one are you going to go to? And we chose Norfolk, and almost everything here is TRICARE accepted. So I think because of that being such a high density for that, that's probably why we have so many services available. I do know from your other podcasts and from some of the posts I've seen, there's families that have to move in order to find something. But that's where I would highly recommend to them again, that if they take the course, and you have to be, how do I say this without insulting anybody, you have to really get in, you have to be involved. This is autism and a BCBA, and the courses, they're not a pill. It's not like I take a pill and you're going to get an instant reaction. You have to work at it. It takes time. And sometimes things that worked for Mattis one day, and a couple of weeks from now, he's evolved and he's growing, he's developing, and we have to change our way of approaching him and how things work for him. Before, we could only get him to work with just sensory toys. Now we can get him to go with he's pretend playing now. So so we're working with it. It's a constantly evolving, just like any child. It's not a cookie cutter. There's no magic pill. And we take BCBA, we do 3 hours a day, and now it's, why doesn't it work? It's a 24/7 job, or not job, but this is a life. And once it becomes part of your routine, it becomes so easy. You just have to make it part of your routine and evolve with it.
Mhm.
So that's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
If they can't find the services, you be the service. You do it for your child, because at the end of the day, as Lori told me earlier before she left for the day, she goes, I'm here for 3 hours. You live with them for the rest of the day. So if you're not going to enact what we do, then it's, you have to do it. You have to live it outside of those 3 hours.
Yeah.
So,
And I think COVID really illustrated how, at the end of the day, it's the parents, usually the moms, who are left holding the situation, whatever it is. And, but at the same time, once you figure out what to do, how to increase talking, decrease tantrums, work on eating, sleeping, potty training, going to the doctor's, dentist, haircuts without a fight, once you have those tools in your tool belt, then you're feeling more confident to, approach any situation for any of your 3 children in a similar manner, calmly. This isn't the end of the world. This, we're going to just work this out. Whatever it is, we will manage. And that's awesome.
You also have to remove your internal parent shame. There's always going to be external parent shame, but once you stop caring what the whole world thinks and you just tell yourself, stay calm, we can work through this, because you have to be the calm in the storm. So when they're having a temper tantrum, like my son, he had a meltdown in the dentist office. We went there. I don't know what happened. And maybe it was because it reminded him of something, but he cried and he ran from the dentist office. In fact, he took my husband by the shirt and he drug him out with him. He was so terrified of the dentist that he actually defecated on himself in the dentist lobby. But the positive from that was he realized he did not like poopy on him. And so that's when he became poopy potty trained real fast, because he has yet to have a poopy accident after that. But it could have been, I became upset because I was like, oh my gosh, how do I help them? And then I realized, calm in the storm. This is probably terrifying. If I was to walk into an office with white walls and no toys around and there's loud noises and they want to, they're all wearing masks and stuff, well, I would be terrified too. So once you're the calm in the storm and you kind of start to do the ABC method of, okay, well, you were scared because of the office. What can I do to make this a little bit better? Let's try it. And my specific child likes routine. So we worked it out with the dentist. We go to the dentist weekly. We pay visits to them in the lobby, and they become our friend. And then Mattis is slowly starting to venture into the office. And I had to actually do that with my other son too. We had to go into the office weekly to visit the doctor, because that's scary. That's not somebody you see all the time. I don't want anybody touching me either if I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So just be the calm in the storm.
We call that desensitization. It's chapter 13, almost the last chapter of my new book. I did a podcast on desensitization. We can put that in the show notes as well.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Is a big part of parenting is, there are going to be things that are going to be scary, and, holding your child down somewhere, like at a dentist or for a haircut or for stitches or for an MRI, like it then can spill over. And that's what happened to Michelle C. In my book. I say, like, all of a sudden bath time got unpaired and she was freaking out. And I said, let me guess, did you hold her down for something? And she said, yeah, she had an MRI and we had to restrain her to do the, the anesthesia. And then, but the good news is she learned to repair the bathtub within a week.
Yeah, it just takes, you can fix it quickly.
Yeah, knowing, like, okay, we went too far. We didn't prepare him enough. My bad. We'll just, repair it. And so, I think you sound like you're doing an amazing job with all 3 of your kids. So I really appreciate all these tips that you're giving our listeners. So we like to end the same way. part of my podcast goals is not to just help the kids, but to have parents and professionals be less stressed and lead happier lives. And I know it sounds like you have had incredible stress in the past year, being in a moving, having 3 kids, having your husband away for months on end. So what are your stress management techniques or tools that you use to take care of yourself?
My husband is my biggest shoulder for when I need help. And so is my mom and dad, but my husband lives with me. And he is constantly reminding me to keep my eye focused. But if I'm not going to be 100%, my kids aren't going to be 100%. So he always encourages me, and I encourage other parents, do something for yourself, even if it's just 15 minutes of time. 15 minutes, you can get a lot done for yourself, even if it's just to go into your closet and shut the door and go hide in there for just 15 minutes. That's all it takes. I've actually will take some of my hobbies and work it in with my kids. So like, I never knew how to bake until COVID because I had to make my own bread. And now, like, when my kids need something, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go bake in here. And it becomes something fun because now they're calm and they're like, oh, what's mom baking? You know, let me get involved. And it becomes something positive. Something I do by myself. I work out. I get up in the morning and I get some exercise. Sometimes on weekends, we go outside and get fresh air. Fresh air is key. But the biggest thing is do something for yourself, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it takes. Because if you're not 100%, your kiddos aren't going to be 100%. And they feed off of that attitude. So if I get up in the morning and I'm cranky, it just starts, the whole world just starts falling down after that. And the same with my husband. If he wakes up cranky, we're all going to start going down. So just, and keep your eye on the big picture. So like, when it comes to working with your children, there's going to be days where there's peaks and valleys, but it's always going like this. When I took your course, and I still recap it about monthly, is there's these moments like this, and then he shoots up. But as long as we're always going in a forward progression, then that's what matters. But the brain is a muscle, so it needs that time to decompress and relax. And just like a parent, you need time to decompress and relax and get yourself together. So that's my advice.
I think that's awesome advice. Thank you so much, Melissa, for your time today. I really enjoyed getting to know you better, and look forward to, you're still in the community. You've upgraded and moved on to the verbal behavior bundle, which has a lot more things. And it has, I think you threw out like pronouns. We have a whole lesson on pronouns. And so, just because the BCBA, Lori is, we've interacted in the past. She knows about my course. She's, in favor of my approach, doesn't mean that every professional there knows exactly how to deal with pronoun reversals and that sort of thing. So, and it's not like this is going to work absolutely for every kid. It might need to be adapted, but we do have other things like the pronoun lesson, which I think is really good too. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you. I'm excited to meet you too.